Hey everyone, today I want to talk about a question that I am asked about a lot on calls, one that I was asked about on the webinar, the advanced webinar yesterday, which, by the way, if you haven't been to one of our webinars, they are a blast. The feedback is always extremely good. That gets you access to the WhatsApp groups. They're just a lot of fun. It's good to be around a bunch of people, 100, 150 people who are suffering with OCD all around the world to show you that you're not alone. So before I go any further, Phil at OCDrecovery.com. Let me know what you think. Please reach out. Don't sit in silence. And today we're going to talk about the similarities between PTSD and OCD. Now, there's no need to get technical and pull out the DSM-5 and what they're going to say in the DSM-6. And people are telling me they're going to classify OCD as a different disorder, not an anxiety-based disorder. That stuff really doesn't matter. It's cool, but it doesn't really add any practical knowledge for breaking down your fears. So OCD, okay, obsessive compulsive disorder, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, will have different variations of how it presents in the mind and different latching mechanisms from the biology of the person, the physiology, the genetic component, how it happens, how they were raised culturally, where they're from. There's a lot of different components. And even if someone had a very rare form of what they now call CPTSD, complex PTSD, which I think that term in of itself has much more cons than pros in the presentation of the terminology. It doesn't mean that there aren't really difficult cases that might not reach a robust level of maybe non-guilt or non-chronic shame or no chronic anxiety or memories that are latching from severe events. Maybe you're involved in war. Maybe you watched people die. Maybe your best friends died in your hand. Maybe you killed someone. But the idea that PTSD is a category of an anxiety-based disorder that's way beyond the realms of help is not true for the most part. We work with the most severe cases of OCD you've ever seen on earth, housebound, multiple suicide attempts, mental hospital, people living there. I was in the mental hospital, very severe. Same thing for PTSD. I've worked with people who have been in war zones, people who have been involved in manslaughter, very, very serious cases, been in jail for a long time. And the belief work, I've never met someone where they can confidently say this. Changing your beliefs and changing your compulsions and avoidance behaviors has no effect on my PTSD. I have never met that person ever, and I do not think that person exists. And you have to be careful the way you speak about this because PTSD is held with a badge of honor even more so than OCD in many cases. No, I've been through a traumatic event. We're not saying that we're discrediting what you've been through. We have compassion and empathy. We are chronic mental health disorder sufferers in all the same boat, whether it's PTSD, GAD, panic disorder, and OCD. We're all here together to help each other in that way. So what usually happens with PTSD in today's world? Number one, like I said with the CPTSD, explains improperly that it's treatment resistant. Don't believe that for sure. Harder, yes. Different components, yes. Can't see a place where beliefs and behavioral changes won't benefit the person to some degree. Okay? Usually it's after a severe traumatic event, understandably so. Again, war, molestation, rape cases, severe sexual trauma, school shootings, etc. We're not discrediting the event. And I was saying this in the webinar yesterday in the comments section when Robert was speaking. You could consider severe OCD as a form of PTSD, the latching mechanism. When your life went from mild OCD, because no one goes from no OCD to chronic. There was mild. Don't think that's possible, in my opinion. No one goes from mild OCD to chronic OCD with a snap of a finger who does not have traumatic experiences of that latching mechanism. How do I know? I hear that every day. So you could say that that's a form of PTSD, but you still have to break down your beliefs and change your behaviors. So let's use different examples that I have seen. Let's say someone comes in and they were sexually traumatized as a child, which is very common in today's world in all different cultures, okay? Now, I'm going to say this for simplicity of the video. It will obviously be much more nuanced and complex, but this isn't a video of going into the deep details of each particular situation. That person will need to, this is how I would say it, in a format sense, if I was presenting in a presentation on a PowerPoint, learn to accept the situation and not like it. Acceptance doesn't mean agreement is a huge part of PTSD, okay? Trying to accept what happened and the people involved. You don't have to like them, but hating them for the rest of your life is probably not going to do you any good, but it's understandable, okay? Number two, looking at the behaviors, compulsions, if there's exposures that are necessary, and bringing down avoidance behaviors behind it. So let's say you were abused in a particular situation, maybe in a household you grew up in. If you live near there, some people want to go nowhere near that, but that keeps the fear cycle alive. I would have that person drive their car back and forth on that street a little bit, maybe multiple days in a row, maybe a week or 2 weeks in a row, to learn to change their belief systems about that and feel that experience. It depends on what the primary emotion is that the person is experiencing with their PTSD. Is it more anxiety and panic based? Is it something that's more guilt and shame? Maybe they were involved in something themselves and there's more shame and guilt, where unconditional self-acceptance is usually more necessary. Not that unconditional self-acceptance isn't needed in panic and anxiety, but it could be a little bit more of a blueprint into more life acceptance than it is. And it's not a clear-cut answer. I had to speak to the person and see what their particular beliefs are, their particular behaviors, what they're avoiding, what they're still going towards, and then work it around there. So that's a very important part with that. But the third thing I would explain is time and patience. And including that, which then directly leads to 4, is most people do not understand PTSD, just like most people do not understand OCD. It's very hard to understand the latching mechanisms of any mental health disorder without experiencing. It doesn't mean the well-intentioned people who are helping us aren't trying their best, but I've hardly, if ever, worse than OCD, because there's so much more information because we're an OCD-based company, I have never seen this video, ever. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I was in a particular situation, either viewing it or I did it myself. The way how I got over my PTSD was learning how to apply unconditional self-life other acceptance, learning that my actions and or the actions of others cannot define my totality and them in the sense of a good and bad person. Yes, would have to be broken down, watching our other videos and breaking down the myth of self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't exist. All we have is unconditional acceptance. Self-esteem is just conditional self-acceptance, needing to always, if I have X, then I'll have Y. If X did not happen to me, then I would still be happy. That's not true, because people have been through those situations, whether it's shootings, other acts of violence, any type of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and there are people out there who have learned to accept it while potentially being sad and having healthy remorse and regret for those situations. So obviously the missing factor is the belief. When we talk about the REBT principles, most people believe A equals C, and there is truth, physiologic and biological truth in happenstance of the event. That's the truth in that. So activating event, being in a war zone and killing someone and watching their life leave their eyes close range as I shot them in the head equaled C. Chronic guilt, shame, depression. That's not actually correct. Yes, it plays a large part, but it's actually A plus B equals C. Belief. That should have never happened. I should have never been here. Being drafted is terrible. I can't live with myself. I just got done reading a terrific book on just everything about killing and events from people. I don't mean this in a bragging way. It will come off that way. If I sat down with many of these soldiers who have ended other people's lives, I could probably change their lives in a way that no one else has ever had, just by having them change their belief systems about what they did. Now, it's very easy for that person to look at me from a PTSD sense and say, yeah, but you've never been in war and you've never killed someone, so why would I listen to you? You're correct. If you're not open-minded to the advice of unconditional self-life other acceptance and me having you help you, nothing that we talk about will work at all. But it's the same thing like when people say you're not a parent, you can't comment on that. I've never murdered someone, but I could still be a juror in a murder trial and still give down a sentence, which potentially has a death sentence. It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple. I'm not saying the experience of that doesn't yield usually the best advice, of course, but beliefs are beliefs. Whether it's PTSD, whether it's OCD, whether it's GAD, whether it's panic disorder, whether it's bi-dysmorphic disorder, I just do not believe that these men and women who've been involved in severe sexual and abusive trauma, that have been involved in killing people or watching people be killed, coming out of jail, or they're like irreversibly stuck forever. They're just fucked. I don't believe that. I don't think that's accurate by any means. And there's too many people that are trying to convince you no, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, let's talk it over. Let's talk about the event. The event happened. It's over. It's done with. We have to learn to accept, allow the memories to come up if it affects our sleep, how it comes, work on the guilt and the shame as you change your beliefs. Very similar to OCD. Again, be very careful with CPTSD. When you look at people who talk about CPTSD, the validity is there more than likely in their experiences, but it's all very similar in the mind of the person. It's almost never coming from, okay, how can I change my beliefs and my behaviors that might give me a better chance of recovery at the CPTSD? It's usually, I have CPTSD, you don't understand, it's different, it's beyond me, and you'll never understand, and I'm stuck. It's like, probably not. Does that mean it might not be very hard, or does that mean that you might not reach where you want to go? But I just don't believe that you're screwed forever. So Phil at OCDrecovery.com. Please let me know what you think. If you find this video, if you've been through a traumatic event, just give it a try, right? The worst that happens, you come in for a call, we talk about beliefs, you don't like it, and you go on your way. I mean, you spent money for a session, it's not the end of the world, but maybe not. Maybe you come in, maybe your life has changed, maybe you learn to understand perspectives and you can get better. Please give it a shot. It's super important. Again, Phil at OCDrecovery.com. Hope to hear from you soon. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for the constant support.